be in conflict of interest. There was no way I could have started my YouTube channel at the job I was at. So I began like dreaming of like, I could have a YouTube channel. I could do this. But when that opportunity fell, it was like, well, now I can't start a YouTube channel because I'm still at the company. It would be a conflict of interest. So I explored like, maybe I start a YouTube channel talking about life or talking about relationships. And at the time I was in my second marriage, which was a total whirlwind of a relationship. It was exactly what I needed at the time, because just like my daughter exposed for me the fact that I had all this trauma, and I began working on it as soon as I realized it, but not maybe at the level of intensity that I needed to work on it. And that really got exposed for me in my second marriage. I was like, okay, maybe I can start a YouTube channel about talking about relationships, because look at this relationship that I, is like the love of my life. We met, we quickly got married, and like, maybe I can tell people how to attract their partner quickly. But like, there was a part of me was like, don't do that, because you're not actually happy in this relationship. He presented himself to be a person that was in alignment with what I wanted and who I wanted to be, but he was able to maintain that until we got married. And once we got married, he became who he actually was, which was a person embedded in his own trauma. He never wanted to leave the house. He never wanted to go anywhere. He never wanted to do anything. And this was after we had a 3-month engagement where we traveled all around the country. So it was a stark contrast from like who I met to who he actually was. And I got married in between. So whatever, but it is what it is. I don't feel regret for any of my decisions. I trust that what I did was purposeful. Now, some amazing benefits to what I received in that marriage was, one, he always encouraged me to be what I wanted to be. I didn't look like this before we got married. I was more of the, brown-haired professional looker. My sister calls it my Karen look. I look like a typical woman, not in my craziness. He helped me to really embrace my craziness, dress how I wanted to dress, look how I wanted to look, wear my big old jewelry like I wanted to wear. And so I really loved that from that relationship. The other thing that I got from him was he had never held down like a job. He did everything like as an entrepreneur, and he made his own money doing his own thing. It broke the paradigm belief for me that in order to survive in life, you have to have a W-2 paying job. So I could see this person, he's up into his 40s, never really having a job, and he's survived and he's fine. And I'm like, okay, like maybe there is, maybe living the entrepreneur lifestyle is possible for me. And in that relationship, I also had immense amounts of healing. I could go into some very crazy trauma therapy moments with him, but I will save that for another time. So I'm thinking of like, if I can't do an insurance exam queen channel, maybe I'll do something else. The relationship thing was an idea, but it didn't really feel genuine to me because I wasn't in love with my relationship anymore. And I also kind of felt embarrassed the fact that I had, gotten engaged in 3 days, married in 3 months, and talking about that was kind of scary. But I had found myself in a group of other people who were wanting to become YouTubers. And we were all following this guy, Aaron Doughty, and he has an awesome YouTube channel, and he talks about the law of attraction and stuff like that. And he's a guy who just pulls up a sheet of paper and draws on it with markers, which is essentially how I teach. I'm like, well, if he can do it, I can do it surely. So I fiddled around with some different ideas that I could do with the YouTube channel, but it never quite panned out because it wasn't in alignment with who I am. But in that group, I had met a girl who loved to, I hate that I say girl and I want to say women, but anyway, who travels all the time. And she made a post about traveling alone as a woman. And I had made a comment because at this point in my marriage and in my therapy, I had actually just started living like I was single. Like, in fact, that was my mantra. Just live like you're single. Stop trying to expect him to change. Stop trying to get him to do anything else. He's not going to leave the house with you. So you just need to do you, boo. Take care of yourself. And so I had commented on her thing, next time you travel, let me know and I'll go with you. So I'm still at the corporate company, sitting at a computer all day, doing absolutely nothing other than emails here and there. And she hits me up and she says, I'm going to go to Belize during Christmas time or in December. Do you want to come with me? And I literally had no reason to say no. You know, I was making a decent amount of money that I could easily afford the airline flights and the cost of what we were doing. I had unlimited PTO. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna go. And I had never left the country before like this. As a child, my dad drove us into Mexico and Canada, but I've never flown out of the country. And on that flight, going over the ocean, like miles and miles of water, hours of just water. I'm like, oh my God, we are so small. Like, we are so small. And we make our problems seem so big and so like end of the world. That trip was completely transformative. I went on that trip and I did things that absolutely terrified me, that scared me, that there's no way in hell I would do these things. But I decided I wanted to be different. I wanted a different life. I wanted to be brave. And that whole trip, every time I was doing something that scared me and spiked my anxiety, I would say, brave new Melissa, and I would just chant this mantra over and over again. I'm gonna do crazy hard things. Brave new Melissa, brave new Melissa. So I come home from that trip like a completely different person. And in this journey, where I had started wanting to become like maybe a YouTuber, there were some other people I met along the way. At one point, I got invited to a group called Alpha Femme on Facebook. And it's run by this woman, Melanie Ann Layer, who in 2016 was living out of her car, homeless. And when I met her was at like $20 million, having started a coaching business.
Oh my gosh, Melissa. First of all, I want to tell you how honored I am to even get a chance to speak about you and to tell the world my experience of you and how much of an incredible person I feel that you are. Well, I'm Melissa's coach. I have been for a short while now, but I work with female entrepreneurs, mostly women who've been through all kinds of different life events, who are willing to just rewrite history for themselves. People who often haven't had anyone bet on them, but that know that they've got it. And they defy the odds. They just need to be spoken to like they're capable, and everything kind of expands and explodes. They're just self-led, very powerful people that just need to have an equal power conversation with someone who's made it and get the ins and outs and what it takes and what do I need. And I've basically built a me for me, because when I first started my journey, it felt like unless you were already connected to the right people and you made all the right moves, your life's already painted for you before you've even had a chance. And so as soon as I started to figure this out for myself, I thought I'm gonna be so clear with this, that no matter who is on a journey of success in their lives, if they find me, they'll go further, whether they're just starting and they're just looking for a role model, or whether they're self-made and they're looking to go further, or whatever it is. Like, I wanted to be someone that's a resource for women in the world. And so it's what I've become, and I've been doing that for the last decade of my life. And I've been lucky enough to have Melissa in my life as another proof of concept for what I believe in, which is just women just need to be spoken to like they can do it, and then they can.
Like most people would say, if you're homeless living out of your car, what authority do you have to coach people on their lives? But she was good at it and she was successful at it, and she ended up building this entirely huge Facebook group.
So before I even considered that I would end up doing this as a career, what happened is I got to the end of my rope, and I just got to the point where I couldn't blame anybody anymore. Like, when everything's breaking down, there's one common denominator in everything that's not working. And although I thought I was the nicest person and that the world was against me, there was just this moment after everything had fallen apart, my relationship, my career, my money. I went bankrupt, sleeping in the front seat of my car in the winter time. Like, there's nothing left, and I had to just face myself. So I found personal development for myself as an accident, because I was actually Googling at the time how to get validation for my emotions in a very difficult time. And what I ended up finding instead was this beautiful, like, how to have the relationship you want kind of outcome on Google. And I realized I was searching for the wrong things. And so my journey wasn't so much about becoming rich or becoming successful even. It was about reclaiming my life and seeing life differently, because I realized I was putting in the wrong questions. Whether it was in the Google search or with God or with anybody, I was putting in the wrong questions. And it led me down a path of personal power, of realizing everything that wasn't working in my life was all circumstance, and everything that did work in my life was all circumstance. There was very little that I was choosing on my own. And so it was kind of like magic. The minute I started working on myself and seeing changes in my life, I started having people wanting to have a life coach to help them see their life differently, their job differently, their relationship differently. And that's how it started. So my first few coaching calls as a life coach were taken from the front seat of that Honda Civic, basically just explaining what I had figured out for myself, hoping it would make a difference for my clients, and it did. And it just kind of grew through word of mouth, and eventually it became what it became.
And one of her things is that she wanted to help make 1 million millionaires.
So this was such a wild thing. It was 2017. I had just started the Alpha Femme brand, and I opened a Facebook group. I'd been trying to get 100 people to launch this Facebook group for months, and I just didn't have the network. And so I finally stopped procrastinating and made peace with 70 people for the inauguration celebration party. And it just came out of my mouth. I want this space to generate 1 million millionaires. Like, I want to co-create 1 million millionaires. And it was such a big vision because there's 70 people in my group at the time. I had no idea how I was going to do that, but that's just stayed in my mind. I want to affect the kind of change where it's normal to have big money in the hands of women, where women can do this. And so every single time a millionaire pops in my world, it feels like the greatest gift from whoever's watching, Mother Nature, God, the universe. Is just like, I see them like a bag of popcorn. There's 1 million millionaires in my field, and they're all in a bag, and once in a while one goes pop. And that's what it felt like when Melissa, she just popped. And it's not a question of like, is it shocking? Is it surprising? It's like, if you're gonna do this work, then you're gonna pop.